Hello class, good afternoon. Ah, yeah, good afternoon class. So, uh, before we do prelims, let's discuss module 4. Okay? But anyway, this is our topic for today. So, assignment module 3 extra credits. If you check the okay, if you check the module 3 assignment, okay, naglagay ako ng bagong fields. Okay? Leave it blank, extra 5 points, share and explains what you learned in this assignment during Google Meet discussion. So, I'm gonna give you at least 10 minutes or 15 minutes kung sino man gusto mag-discuss ng kanilang assignment from Module 3, then I'll give him extra points. Okay? So, just to kasi problema pag may just to show or if you want to earn more para pambawi if mababa yung grades niyo in the mababa yung grades niyo sa quiz sa last quiz, uh, you can compensate it using this extra points. Okay? So, okay, sabi ko nga, let's allot at least 10 minutes or 15 minutes kung sino gustong mag-share ng kanilang assignments from yung module 3 assignments. Then, present just answer these questions, yung what did you learn? Kung ano natutunan nyo or kung gusto nyo basahin lang yung assignment nyo. Kasi kapag binasa nyo yan, yung sagot nyo, masyadong marami. Kaya just give us a brief, just briefly explain kung ano yung ginawa mo sa assignment na yun. Okay? Just to motivate you to talk. Ha? Just to motivate you to talk on this class para hindi naman ako lagi nagsasalita. Kasi I'm still recovering on COVID class. I'm still recovering COVID. Pag 2 oras ako nagsasalita, nahirapan ako huminga after the class. So, I'm trying to limit my talking. Okay? Meron ba sa inyo, now the question is, meron ba sa inyong interesadong mag-share ng kanilang assignments? Just to talk about their assignments. And I'll give you extra points. Okay? Meron ba? Narinig nyo ba yung class?
Yes, sir.
So, may gusto bang sumagot dito sa extra 5 to get an extra 5 points on their assignments? Wala. Mahihain kayong lahat. Anyone? Come on. Kahit isa o dalawa. Wala? Okay. If nag-iisip
About dun sa
Module 3 assignment. Sa past. Yeah. Regarding the Module 3 assignment. Ito. About sa risk management plan. Okay? Anything. Just a brief of information regarding your assignment. You can discuss it whatever you want. Just explain what you learned or kung anong importansya ng assignment na yon or something. Just discuss something.
sir, try mo, sir.
Jaisel, taas-taas na nga ng grade mo. Pataasin mo pa ulit.
Ang pas ganun, sir, pas.
Joke lang, Jaisel. Go. Go. Okay, give an example, Jaisel. Be the motivator. Okay? Sige.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Can you it's
Okay
much
lang,
better
sir.
if you open your cam para at least ganyan kami concentrate on listening to you. Okay? Yes. The floor is yours. Okay? The screen is yours.
Sir, ano ba? Marami akong natutunan tungkol dito sa may ano po ng Pfizer and BioNTech for COVID-19 mRNA vaccine o yung risk management plan ng COVID vaccine na ginawa ng Pfizer and BioNTech, which is yung pag-provide nila ng mga tawag dito. Wait lang, sir.
Yeah, no pressure.
Pag-provide nila ng mga cautious wait lang, sir, maliit kasi yung ano ko. Yan, pag-provide ng cautious plan, sir, sa mga may mga anaphylaxis o yung mga severe or potentially life-threatening allergic reaction, ganun, sir. Tapos yung mga pregnancy and breastfeeding mom, yun na. Tapos yung mga comorbidities na example yung may mga chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, etc. etc. Tapos, sa risk management plan na ginawa ng Pfizer and BioNTech, nalaman ko na yung vaccine na ginawa nila is hindi naman talaga siya for para mawala yung sakit, kundi nag-minimize lang siya ng severity ng COVID-19, sir. Tapos, sa ginawa nilang plan na examine na may mga alternative solution yung ginawa nila for vaccine para medyo mas maiwasan yung mga risk pag nagpapakuna ka ng Pfizer. Ganun, sir.
Yes. Thank you for your presentation. As you can see on my screen now, dahil nag-recite si Jazel and presented kung anong natutunan niya sa assignment niya, I'm gonna give her 5 extra points. Okay? So basically, 35 out of 35 points na yung nakuha niya. Okay? So, meron pa ba? So, to summarize regarding the Jazel's assignment is nakakita siya ng risk management plan ng Pfizer. Okay? Ano yung company na yung gumawa ng risk management plan na yon? It's Pfizer and BioNTech. So, nakakita siya ng company na gumagamit ng risk management plan, which is Pfizer and BioNTech, that they use it for the research on COVID vaccine. Okay? She share her link. Yan, kung gusto niyo makita yung results. Now, sinabi nga niya kung ano yung mga risk na discuss niya kung ano yung mga natutunan na hindi naman pinapagaling na yung lahat, hindi naman pinapagaling ng yung vaccine yung sakit, but more on just to reduce. Yun nga yan. Okay? So, thank you for sharing, Giselle, and I give you 5 points. Sino pa ba? Through this class, this activity, at least ma-motivate kayo, magkaroon kayo ng tiwala sa sarili nyo. Okay? Na to present. Don't worry, class. We don't judge. I'm just trying to motivate you na maging confident to yourself. Okay? Anyone na gusto pang makakuha ng 5 extra points on their assignments? Anyone? Okay, mahiya. Because when in the future class, when you go to your own work, you will be present. There's a possibility na magre-present kayo in your whole company You present your work to your boss, you discuss the problem in your boss, and I want you to be confident enough. Hindi yung, ako sir. Okay, forever kayong hindi mahalata ng mga boss nyo na forever na lang kayong dyan na lang sa posisyon na yan. Right? So, I'm trying to train you, class, to motivate yourself to discuss whatever you learn. Discuss something regarding the assignment, of course. Wala ba? We can move on na. Wala talaga may gusto. Okay, dahil walang may gusto, let's move on na. As you can see on my screen, class, prelims on Thursday. It's like I said before, involves module 1 to module 5. But I think we can hindi natin matatakal yung module 5. I can't explain module 5 or discuss module 5 today. So what you can do is just read the module 5 that I've given you. Then I'm just gonna add it on the prelims. Konti lang. Maybe 10% of the module 5 there lang. I will concentrate more on module 1 to module 4. So please review everything regarding module 1 and module 4. But don't forget to read the module 5. Okay? Now, before we go to the module 4, which is approach on risk analysis and risk assessment, I just want to recap. I just want to recap regarding risk, vulnerability, and threats. Okay? I'm just gonna open the module visibility. Okay? I just want to recap the risk, vulnerability, and threat because we can't go further if sa inyo nalilito pa rin yung pinagkaiba ng risk, threats, and vulnerability. Okay? So we will do a recap of risk versus vulnerability and threats. Okay? Magkakaiba tong tatlong class pero mayroon silang similarity. Okay? Before an explanation to this risk, bago natin malaman kung ano ang risk, kung ano ibig sabihin definition of risk, we should learn what is vulnerability and threats, which we discussed on module 2. Okay? Sinasabi nga natin sa module 2, vulnerability is any weakness within the organization information system can be exploited by the criminals. What do I mean by that? Vulnerability, kung ano yun yung weakness point, meaning kahinaan ng system or kahinaan ng business nyo. For example, yung computer mo, outdated siya. For example, yung computer mo, outdated yung antivirus niya. Then, dahil outdated yung computer mo, that's what we can call vulnerability. Dahil outdated siya, pwede siyang pasukan ng malwares. Now, yung malwares na yun yung threat. Okay? So, one example is the vulnerability of having outdated program. Okay? Manghihina yung system. Parang kahinaan ng computer mo or vulnerability, kahinaan. Yan yun. Weakness point. Yan ang vulnerability. Another example, class. Okay? Meron kang jewelry store. Anong kahinaan ng for example, one of the vulnerability of a jewelry store, if walang security guard. Nagets nyo ba yung class? Nagets nyo ba yung vulnerability?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, now, dito na lalabas yung threat. Okay? Ano yung threat? Threat, sabi nga natin, bago natin ma-define to, we should know the vulnerability. Now we go to threat. Threat is a process that magnifies the likelihood of a negative event. Okay? The probability of negative event. Such as exploit of vulnerability. Meaning, kung in-exploit mo yung isang vulnerability, you are a threat. For example, sabi nga natin, may jewelry store kayo. Dahil wala kayong security guard, there's a threat na magkakaroon ng magnanakaw. So yung magnanakaw, that's the threat. Kasi nga, wala kayong security guard. I-exploit niya ngayon yung gagawin niya advantage yung wala kang security guard, wala kang nakabukas yung pintuan mo, diba? I-exploit niya ngayon yung vulnerability mo. That's why you will have a threat. Okay? For cybersecurity, for example, yung vulnerability nga na wala tayong antivirus. Outdated yung antivirus natin. Now, there's a threat, possible or likelihood na magkaroon ng negative event. Ano yung negative event na yun? Malwares. Dahil wala nga kayong antivirus, possible na magkaroon ng negative event, which is what we call threat. The terminology ni threat. Possible na magkaroon kayo ng malwares. Okay? Mga viruses, mga worms. Dahil nga, yung vulnerability nyo is wala kayong antivirus. Papasok lang yung mga malwares sa inyo. Okay? Now, because nagets nyo ba yung class? Nagets nyo na yung vulnerability and threats. The difference between two. Okay? Anything that is likely possible malicious attack, anything a malicious attack or negative event, we call it threat. Anything na makaka-harm sa business nyo, sa sarili nyo, sa devices nyo, we call it threat. Okay? Now, dahil meron ba tayong question dun, class? Wala naman? It's clear?
Wala, sir.
So now, we already know the vulnerability and threat. We can now identify what is risk. Okay? Risk is the potential for loss, damages, or destruction of assets by a cyber threat or by a threat. Okay? Meaning, ano yung potential na masisira yung game mo, yung potential na manakawan ka, yun yung risk na tinatawag natin. Yung potential na masira yung isang bagay o yung assets mo nga, that's what we call risk. Yung kunwari, potential risk na potential na harmful na gagawin ng isang threat, manakawan ka. Okay, you have a jewelry, for example, you have a jewelry store or a computer, di ba? One of risk is possible na magkaroon ka ng virus or possible na manakawan ka sa jewelry store mo. Di ba? The situation na you called na possible na manakawan ako o possible nga namang may mangyaring threat sa'yo, the possibility of having you to have a cyber threat or a threat, anything, environmental threat, that's what you call risk. Now, the term, sir, paano natin measure yun or paano natin ma-prevent yun in the future in risk? That's why, dun na pumasok yung module 3 natin na risk management. Risk management involves a process of measuring the risk, identifying the risk, para ma-reduce mo siya in the future. Okay? So, yun nga, and one good example rin here on risk, vulnerability, and threat, okay? Hindi ka magkakaroon ng risk kung walang threat. Anong ibig mo dun sabihin, sir? Okay? Hindi ka naman magkaka-virus sa computer mo kung wala namang threat, kung wala namang malware na papasok sa'yo. For example, you can have a vulnerability, pero it doesn't mean na may threat ka. Okay? For example, may vulnerability yung computer mo na na walang antivirus, di ba? There's a chance na walang antivirus, hindi updated yung computer mo. But there's a case na possible na may vulnerable yan, but walang threat. Then, if wala kang threat, wala ka ring risk. Okay? Pero may vulnerability. So, paano magkakaroon ng walang threat yung computer mo wala kang antivirus? Possible yung computer na yun hindi connected sa internet, hindi mo siya ginagamit, hindi mo siya linalagyan ng USB, then there's no threat. Pero may vulnerability. Vulnerable pa rin yung computer mo, pero walang threat dahil hindi mo naman ginagamit or hindi mo naman kinonect sa internet or hindi mo naman linagyan ng USB. Okay? So, there's no risk kapag wala ka namang potential harm sa isang devices or sa organization mo. Okay? Wala kang risk kapag wala namang threat. At wala namang threat kung wala namang vulnerability. Okay? Pero magkakaroon always ng vulnerability ang isang bagay. Okay? So, sinabi nga natin, sa Module 3, may iba-ibang klaseng threat or risk. Okay? Pwedeng maging legal liabilities, human error, natural disaster, or threat to digital assets. Yun lang yun. So, hindi lang panay cybersecurity or hindi lang yung threat na pwede mangyari sa sa business mo is hindi lang panay cybersecurity class. You can also have a fire, earthquake na pwede makasira sa business mo, pwede masira yung storage mo, pwede masira yung shop mo, di ba? So, yun yung diniscuss natin on Module 3. Now, without a proper understanding on risk, vulnerability, and threat, maguguluhan ka sa risk management. Okay? So, nag-gets nyo na ba yung pinagkaiba ng risk, vulnerability, and threat? Okay na ba? Clear na ba sa inyo yon? The recap on risk, vulnerability, and threat.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Para in the future, pag nasa company kayo, sir, may threat tayo. Alam niyo yung term na gagamitin niyo. Okay? Paano tayo nagkaroon ng threat? Ano yung vulnerability na in-exploit ng threat na yon? Paano tayo nagkaroon ng threat? So, ano yung problema? Ano yung vulnerability? Ano yung weakness? Doon nyo pwedeng gamitin yung IAS knowledge nyo ngayon. Okay? So, anyway, we continue on Module 4, discussion. The Module 4 is titled Approaches to Risk Analysis and Risk Assessment. Okay? Way on doing risk analysis and risk assessment. Okay? If you don't know the term approaches. Okay? Sir, bakit risk analysis at risk assessment? Kasi both risk analysis and risk assessment have two main approaches. Okay? There's a lot more approaches. You can search for more. There's more than two approaches. You can do survey. You can use software tools on doing risk analysis or risk assessment. Okay? But there's always two main approaches on risk analysis and risk assessment. Okay? Yun nga, before we go on, before we discuss the two main approaches, we will discuss the risk analysis. Just a quick recap on risk analysis. As we mentioned on Module 3, risk analysis involves the process of measuring the frequency and severity of the threat or the risk. Okay? We measure kung gaano kadalas at gaano ba kalala yung magiging impact ng threat na yon or yung risk na yon. Okay? So that is risk analysis. That's the process that what we are doing on risk analysis. Okay? So two main approaches on risk analysis and risk assessment is we have qualitative and quantitative. Okay? So class, if you review the qualitative and quantitative approaches when I give you the document, can you say something what is qualitative? Can you say ano ba ang qualitative? Ano bang quantitative? Can you share what those two terms means? Anyone? Anyone? Hello? Wala bang gustong mag-recite? Okay. Qualitative risk analysis is less about the numbers and more about what could actually happen day to day if one of the risks on your list were to occur. Okay. Qualitative research or data is more on the experience. It's more on the observation results. Okay? Hindi more on the word highly, high, low, medium, on how you assess the situations. Okay? So if you do a qualitative approach, you will do more on you will conduct a survey more on their observations, more on their observations, more on their experiences. Okay? Wala talagang facts, more on their opinions of for example of this is sabi nga natin on module 3 on the example here is power outage, di ba? May example tayong power outage. Sinabi ko nun, the data I said on probability of impact, I approach the qualitative, meaning more on based on my experience or opinion, I said it's my likely. Ha? Like magkakaroon ng brownout, possible 50%. Now that's only my opinion. Okay? So that's what we call qualitative approach. Okay? Also, if you conduct a survey and you got a survey on inside a company, more on their experiences, not based from their logs or not based from a system logs, okay? It's more on qualitative approach. Okay? Qualitative aren't as precise. Hindi siya precise because it's more based on opinions nga lang naman. Okay? Based on experience lang naman. So, but they provide an important piece of information. An attack is about more than financial ramification. It's also through business operation into chaos. If you know ahead of time how risk might impact each productivity, you have a backup place to mitigate those risks. So meaning, if you already have output like if sinabi mo ng likely or high, then you at least have a presence of mind na there will be a future risk na mag-occur basing from your opinions and your experience. Okay? So, but on quantitative, okay, quantitative analysis or assessment focus on numbers, focus on facts. Sir, saan nyo nakukuha yung facts na yan? The output of the data, kung saan mo nakuha yan, more on a large sample size at nag-undergo siya sa statistical analysis. Okay? Nagkaroon pa ng formulated. Pinurmula pa nila. So, for example, in quantitative, you want to know the exact kind of malware you experiencing in one day. Saan mo makukuha yung exact numbers na yon? You can get that on other company. Like, you can get that data on antivirus data. You can ask for their data logs kasi mas marami ang large sample size nila. Okay? Computer-generated yung numbers na yun, which is very precise. Okay? To perform quantitative to measurable data points analysis. May questions ba tayo, class? So, kung sinabi mong quantitative risk analysis, more on the data it will show is more on precise. They use formula, they use the method of statistical analysis para makuha talaga yung the number, the precise number or the precise output na gusto mo. Okay? That's quantitative. Okay? Hindi lang hula-hula. Hindi based from experience or hindi lang based sa observation mo, kundi based on a large sample size. Okay? For example, quantitative, if you want to get SLE, to calculate the single loss expectancy, you use the asset cost times the probability percent. Okay? If you do risk analysis on, you want to get the single loss expectancy, then you need the asset cost times the probability, and then you get the exact number of his loss expectancy. Okay? Yan yung lugi niya. Okay? So for example, fire, one computer, you can always get the exact number of that cost. Okay? Hindi lang based from my observation, sir, worth 32,000, 50, 51, manghuhula ka. No. You can get this cost on a computer shop, on internet, basing from average cost of one computer, you can get a quantitative data here. Okay? Probability, well, you can combine both. You can combine the qualitative data or your quantitative data. For example, this is quantitative data na sir, saan ko makukuha yung probability ko ng fire? Saan ko makukuha yung probability kung kailan magkakaroon ng fire? You can get that data on a Fire Bureau department. Okay? They did analysis, statistical analysis. They did a lot of research to get a quantitative data or probability on having a fire threat in 1 year or in 1 day. Okay? By that formula, you can have 6,000 pesos. Okay? By that formula, you can expect the quantitative or the exact numbers. Okay? What you will lose, expectancy loss in one computer, in one asset. Okay? That's what example of quantitative data. Okay? We can also do versus giving you here example of let's differentiate each other using an image. Okay? Quantitative data answers more on it answers the question more on what, where, how, when, and who. Because when you answer that questions, it's more on the real data. Okay? Like when, the exact date. Who, the exact person. Okay? What? Okay? So, kung ano yung mismong cause or ano yung bagay na yun. So, it answers more on this kind of questions. And qualitative data answers more on why. Okay? Because based on more on experience nga naman, based on more observations and interviews. Okay? One of the example is quantitative data. Okay? You can see it's based on numbers. Kasi nga precise. Makikita nyo siyang precise yung binigay sa'yo. Alam mo kung gaano karami, alam mo gaano kakonti. Now, qualitative data is based on opinions and experience like, palagay ko ganito, 2% lang palagay ko, likely, ang more on possible answers dyan is medium size lang siya, parang ganon. Pero if you ask on quantitative data, it has 35 centimeter of height. Okay? Sa quantitative data, maybe medium height lang siya. Medyo ganun lang siya kalaki. Medyo ganun lang makukuha mo. There's no really, it's just based on experiences nga naman at opinions. Okay? For qualitative data, it's smaller sample size, maybe inside your own department lang. But for quantitative data, includes a large sample size, maybe whole organizations or whole world. We're talking about the whole world. Kasi when there's a lot more samples, the more output na makuha ng, the more na makakuha siya ng sample output, the more na tama yung data, the more na magiging precise. Okay? So, in qualitative data, they use statistical analysis nga, pero sa qualitative data, they're more on interview and observations. Okay? They can use surveys also on what are their opinions or experiences. Okay? But for a survey for quantitative data, more on, more on dapat precise yung sagot mo. Okay? Ang init dito. Ang init ngayon. Anyway, next is quantitative data is more on objectives, meaning more on numbers, precise numbers output. Qualitative data more on subjectives, more on the feelings person. Okay? Kung anong feelings ng person na yun. Close-ended questions, quantitative data more on close-ended questions like ano itong close-ended, more on the precise questions. Okay? Like what kind of malware did you get? Virus? Okay, sorry. How many viruses did you get in 1 day? That's one example. For open-ended questions, more on ilang malware ang nakuha mo sa isang araw. So it doesn't matter kung viruses ba siya, kung worms ba siya. It doesn't matter kung bot virus ba siya. Okay? So it doesn't specify really the questions. So, that's the difference between open-ended and closed-ended. So, makikita nyo naman in this example, kung yung precise at yung more on, yun nga, yung more on based on opinions and experience lang, which is uh, it's measured by high, low. Minsan mini-measure yung qualitative data, their output is more on high, low, medium, okay? Critical sa mga ganon. Okay? Kasi hindi siya precise. You're just you're just answering basing from your experience or your observations. Okay? So, ganun yung pinagkaiba ng risk analysis. Ng two, sorry, yun ang pinagkaiba ng two main approaches, the qualitative and the quantitative. Meron ba tayong questions dun, guys? Class?
Wala naman, sir.
So, yun yung pinagkaiba niya na huwag kayong malito. Madali lang naman tandaan qualitative, less about numbers, more about the actually happens. Quantitative is more on the focus numbers, more on precise output. Okay? So let's move to what is risk assessment. We will just recap the module 3. Assessment helps you identify, categorize the risk, plus provides an outline of potential consequence. Okay? You categorize if it's a threat. Threat ba siya sa human, is it a human error threat? Is it a natural disaster threat? Okay? That's the one of the reason why you are doing risk assessment. Okay, you identify, because it's risk assessment is under risk management. You always identify or identification of the risk is always there. Okay, risk identification. Ang pinag-iba lang, categorize the risk. Okay, it provides outline of the potential consequence, the impact. Okay? So what's the difference between risk assessment, risk management, and risk analysis? Sometimes kasi naguguluhan yung mga tao, naguguluhan kayo, mga students or yung mga ibang, even a professional people, on using the term risk assessment, risk management, and risk analysis. Okay? Makikita nyo. The difference between these three is risk management is more on macro level process, meaning wider ang study. Kaya kapag nung pina-search ko sa inyo yung risk management plan, makikita nyo ang daming content. Kasi nandun na rin yung risk assessment, nandun na rin yung risk analysis. Risk management is a plan. You create a plan. Okay? Now, anong inside dun sa plan na yan? Of assessing, analyzing, prioritizing, and making strategy to mitigate threats to an organization, assets, and earnings. Okay? Risk management is more on plan on how you manage the risk. Okay? So that's the wider, macro means more on wider level process. Mas marami siyang process na gagawin. Okay? So risk assessment is a meso level, medium, intermediate level, medium level, na meaning it has a lesser process compared to risk management, but risk assessment is more on providing data. Risk assessment and risk analysis is more on providing data for creating a risk management plan. Okay? So risk assessment is a meso level within risk management. It aims on breakdown threats and identifiable categories and define all potential impact of each risk. So, i-identify mo lang siya kung anong klaseng threats, kung anong potential impact niya. So, yun yung sakop ng risk assessment that you will provide on risk management. Okay? Then, also, on risk assessment, you also identify which, dahil na yung potential impact niya, you also, on risk assessment, there's also what you call evaluating it, kung anong unang ipa-prioritize mo. Okay? So, papakita ng risk assessment yon. Risk analysis is a micro level process, mas maliit yung process na gagawin, which is you can just measure the frequency and the severity. of the risk and their associated impact. Identification. Okay? So yun lang yung sakop niya. Mas maliit na process under risk management. But the main point here, risk assessment and risk analysis just provide data for risk management plan. Okay? Lahat tong dalawang to under sa risk management. Okay? Now we can, on risk assessment, we can go here. On risk assessment, we can also do the approach of risk matrix. Have you watched the video explanation here? Huh? I've already given you a video explanation here on explaining this one. In case na hindi ko nga But anyway, before we discuss on how this matrix works, let's define risk matrix muna. Risk matrix is also known as probability and severity risk matrix. Is designed to help you minimize the probability of potential risk and to optimize project performance. Okay? So, more on visually depiction of the risk affecting project to enable companies to develop mitigation strategy. Meaning, it's the simplest way, the easiest way to present to your higher officials of your organizations. Kung gusto nyo mag-present ng risk management, yung plano nyo, kung gusto nyo mag-present ng plano nyo on risk management plan, you can also use the approach of risk matrix. You can just use the table which show the severity of each threat or risk. Okay? Makikita nyo yung probability ng mas madali nyong maiintindihan. Mas madaling maiintindihan ng mga boss nyo without reading all the documents. They can just you can just use the risk matrix to to show it to your boss as a visual presentation. Okay? Sometimes in risk matrix they use on risk matrix they use color, okay, to visualize it on how intense the threat or the risk. Okay? They sir, ganyan ba talaga paggawa ng risk matrix? Severity dito, likelihood sa taas? No, it depends on the researcher if you like. As long it composed of likelihood and the severity of the impact of the threat, pwede kayong gumawa ng risk matrix. You can say na dito yung likelihood, dito yung severity. Some other researchers do that. Okay? The common ways they do is they represent each severity by colors. Okay, the likelihood, they show it the prioritization, meaning they show it by the intensity of the risk. Show it by colors, by sometimes green as very low. Okay, you can neglect that. Some minor is blue, major is minor is orange, then catastrophic is red. They sometimes do that, okay? Or for example, very low, meaning the likelihood of that is 1 to 10%. They sometimes view it as green, blue, orange, yung medium nga 41 to 60%, high yung 70 to 80 possible na gano'n, at yung very high either 81% to 100%. Etong percentage na to, it will always depends on the researcher. Pag sinabi niyang 90% to 100, then 90% to 100, it's equivalent to very high. Okay? Now, as you can see, I added the benefits here, which is called identity event outcomes should prioritize a group further investigation, meaning when you use a risk matrix kasi you will identify the outcomes on what you will prioritize. For example, here we know that the priority of power outage based from the risk analysis nga, yung answer sa risk analysis, the likely and the severity. Okay? Kung major consequence ba siya. Okay? So, using risk matrix, makikita na natin yung risk priority. Kung unahin ba natin yung prioritize yung risk na yun or pwede natin ipaliban. Okay? So, saan ba yun? So, yan yung one of the benefits if you use it correctly. Okay? Provide a good graphical portrayal. Like you said, makikita mo pa lang dito, graphical meaning, yun nga, makikita mo yung kulay, kung ano, isang tingin mo pa lang, alam mo na kung anong uunahin. Kung ano yung severe problem. That's what you call graphical portrayal risk across a project does. Simplify the risk management process. We can just submit this table on without documenting others. Like you can just show it to your boss at maintindihan na nila agad. Makikita na nila agad na power outage is high priority pala siya. Okay? Without reading a bunch of topics or sections of your documents on your risk management plan, you can just show them the risk assessment matrix so they can understand it immediately. It simplifies it. Okay? Help to identify areas of risk reductions dahil nga naalam mo na kung saan yung naalam mo na agad kung saan yung ipa-prioritize mo. Provide a quick and relatively inexpensive risk analysis. Okay? So, mas makakamura ka dahil yun nga mas mabilis mong gawin to. Then, enable more detailed analysis to be focused on high-risk areas. Okay? So, you can't do a risk assessment matrix if you don't do the risk analysis first. Okay? Hindi ka makakagawa ng risk matrix mo for risk assessment kung hindi mo ginawa muna yung risk analysis mo. Dahil kailangan to know the priority, to know the prioritization ng isang risk, you should know the potential impact muna or and the probability. Okay? Para makuha natin tong tong value na high, dapat gumawa ka muna ng risk analysis. Gumawa ka muna ng risk analysis mo. Dapat makuha mo muna to, then makakakuha na tayo ng magagawa na natin yung risk assessment natin. Okay, makukuha na natin tong priority, kung paano natin prioritize. Okay? So, one of the kung paano gamitin ang risk matrix is ganito. Okay? I show you a video here, kaya hindi ko na i-discuss to, dapat alam nyo na. Okay? One of the explanation here is, for example, we have the likelihood here and the severity here. Okay? Now, we said that power outage based from risk analysis, it has a major consequence. Okay? Let's just assume, class. Let's just assume. Major consequence. So, major daw siya dito. Nandito sa column, nandito sa row na to. Okay? Now, basing from the, now, we will get the probability of the impact. Likely. Okay? Sabi dito, yung power outage na risk, may either, ang katumbas ng likely kasi is 41 to 60%. Okay? You can just say rin dito na 41 to 60%. It's not exact. It's more on qualitative data. 60%. Okay? So, check na natin sa risk matrix table natin kung saan yung likely. So, ito, 41 to 60%. Then, under 41 to 60% na column, makikita nyo dito sa major, high siya. Okay? So, ganun gumamit. So, you just need to know the column of the likely and the row of the major. Okay? So, that's why the risk matrix result prioritization is high. Dahil under daw siya sa column na likelihood ng ganyan niya, the frequency. Okay? So, high, as major niya is, dahil ang severity based from our risk analysis is major, then we can say na the prioritization of this power outage is high. Okay? Meaning, dapat unahin muna natin siya na isolve. Okay? Pero kapag alam nyo na kung sino ang uunahin nyo. Kung meron pang mas malala dyan, kung meron pang mas very high, then you will know, for example, this is an, let's say, hack. Okay? Pag sinabi natin na catastrophic lahat, tapos to likely is or on almost, okay, more on 100%, sabi natin 90%, sabi natin 90%, then makikita, kapag chinek natin yung digital threat to digital asset. Okay. So, this type niya is digital asset. So, hack, catastrophic, almost, impact area your computer na ginagamit. Then, the output of this prioritization will be very high. Bakit, sirs? Dahil dito, catastrophic, kahit bibihir, makikita nyo kasi dyan, class, kahit bibihira mangyari yung catastrophic, yung critical, very dangerous na threat, kahit bibihira lang mangyari yan, medium pa rin siya. Okay? Importante pa rin siya. Okay? Pero dahil sinabi natin almost always, almost always siya very high. Okay? Nandito siya, very high. Meaning, bago mo solusyonan yung power outage, mas unahin mo yung hack problem mo. A simple table like this, already, alam mo na agad, maintindihan mo na agad yung problema mo, alam mo na agad yung risk problem mo sa company mo. Okay? Nakagawa ka na ng simple risk assessment mo or nakagawa ka na ng simple risk management. Plan mo if meron ka pang, if you included action taken. Okay? Pero kapag yan lang yung present mo, at least meron ka ng risk assessment na simple, agad nang malalaman ng higher ups at paano na nila, anong unang babudgetan nila, anong unang sosolusyonan nila. Okay? So, that's one of the use of risk matrix. Very common to, kahit saan mo pa, very common approach to on solving or on creating a risk assessment or risk management. Okay? Very common na ginagawa to. Kasi sobrang daling ang intindihin. Nagets nyo ba yung risk matrix, class? Daming hanggang. Nagets nyo ba? Are we good here? Class? Oo. May questions ba kayo doon? Meron ba?
Kasla makatikaw, sir.
So, mga tikaw, saan kayo na nahihilo? Ano yung titikaw? Nahihilo ba kayo sa paggamit ng risk matrix? Kailangan pa ba natin ito? Kung bakit pa? So, paano mo nakuha yung result? Kung paano niya prioritization? Ulitin lang natin. Before makukuha natin to, dapat meron na kayong potential impact at probability. Okay? Dapat meron na kayong output dapat gumawa na kayo ng risk analysis nyo. Okay? For example, what can you think of risk? Ano ba bang, for example, may business tayong jewelry store. Okay? Anong pwede nyong maisip na risk? Nagbigay nga kayo ng isang risk.
Yung walang security guard, sir.
Walang security guard. Okay.
Walang logbook.
Let's say walang security guard muna. Okay. The threat type is more on strategic management errors. Okay? Hindi nila na-manage yung pag-strategize na dapat may security. Okay? Potential impact. Kung gaano kalala. Kung gaano ka-severe kapag walang security guard. Well, you can get this output. We do risk analysis muna. You can get this output either through interviewing or observing, or getting analytical data on different company like security guard company. So, let's say na lang na, for example, nag-survey tayo, nag-observe tayo ng isang business na jewelry store, na sabi nila pag walang security guard, major problem lang yan. Okay? Sabi natin major, hindi naman catastrophic, hindi naman critical. Okay? Major. So, or let's say sabi na lang natin minor. Okay, minor. Hindi ganun talaga kailangan ng security. But if you do a survey, if we do it correctly, totoo bang minor lang ba talaga ang consequence na mangyayari pag walang security guard ang isang jewelry store? So palagay nyo, kung walang security guard ang jewelry store, palagay nyo ba minor lang yun? Let's say, from our observation pa lang, or you use your common sense, mostly major or catastrophic yan. Let's say catastrophic na lang. Okay? Let's say catastrophic. Now, the likelihood, okay, the threat is not security guard, more on magnanakaw. Okay? Magnanakaw. Okay. Kasi, as you can see, when we have a security guard, more on halos lahat naman ng jewelry store merong security guard. Okay? The likelihood. Parang ang pangit na example. Let's say magnanakaw na lang. Okay? And let's say natural disaster kasi more on natural lang mga nangyayari. Or let's say I think more on strategic, ganyan pa rin yan eh. Management errors or yeah. Actually, let's say everything naman kasi pwede sila mag-create ng fire or something like that. Okay? Let's say na lang na strategic management error siya. Okay? Now, ang magnanakaw, okay, mas magandang example to. The threat of having magnanakaw. Okay? The risk na magkakaroon ng, let's say na the potential na magkaroon na manakawan ka. Okay? Magnanakaw. Let's say na ang potential impact niya is major. Or sabihin natin catastrophic. Catastrophic pa rin. Kasi kapag nanakaw lahat ng files mo, lahat ng yan, di ba, ang laking mangyayari doon. So, sir, paano mo nakuha itong catastrophic? It's based on my research or based on your either qualitative or quantitative research. Yung approach nyo. Depende sa way ng pinagkuha nyo. Pwede nyo kinuha nyo sa munisipyo, pumunta kayo sa munisipyo, kumuha kayo ng data kung gaano kalala ang ganyan, kung basing from your research, kapag basing from munisipyo research, catastrophic siya, then you have a quantitative data na catastrophic siya kasi larger sample size eh. Sa munisipyo, kinukuha na yung buong barangay, lahat ng nanakawan, di ba? Pero kung gusto nyo from observation, yung from qualitative approach, yung way na gagawin mo is yung qualitative lang, you can just interview 2 or 3 jewelry store, kung ano masasabi nila based from their experience, kung ano masasabi nila kung major ba or minor or negligible lang yung pagnanakawan ka. Then, if sinabi nila yung tatlong jewelry store na yun, sabi nila lahat, syempre catastrophic, malulugi kami ng malaking pera. Then, you can say on this table na catastrophic siya. Okay? Based from your analysis na yan. Okay? Nag-gets nyo ba yung class kung bakit catastrophic siya? O
Yes, sir.
nalilito pa rin kayo? This is always based from your research output. Kung anong based from your analysis research. Okay? Yung process na ginawa nyo, yung process na ginawa mo sa risk analysis, it will always based on this. Ha? Huwag ka pwede magpugto-pugto. Pwede rin naman, pero ikaw lang yun. Sa'yo lang yun. Okay? Pag pugto-pugto, qualitative data na useless pa rin dahil ikaw, hindi ka gumamit ng smaller. Talagang ikaw lang sa'yo lang talaga. Di ba? Dapat the more na mas marami kang sample size, the more na mas maganda yung magiging risk management plan mo. Okay? Kung hindi ka naman nag-observe, hindi ka naman nag-interview, basing from your observation lang, ikaw lang mismo, as a ganyan, the more na hindi ganun ka-effective yung risk management plan mo. Okay? So, for example nga, the outcome we did on risk analysis is catastrophic. Okay? Yan yung outcome na based from pag-interview nyo, pag-observe nyo, ito yung naging output. Okay? Catastrophic siya. Linabel natin siya as catastrophic. Now, the probability, sir, saan ko na naman makukuha yung probability of impact based ulit sa risk analysis mo. Okay? Kaya nga hindi makakagawa ng risk assessment pag hindi ka muna nag-risk analysis. Okay? So, based from risk analysis, based from your observation na naman, so, based from your observation, surveys, or depende sa approach na ginawa mo, sabihin natin, ang pagnanakaw, minor lang. Ang pagnanakaw na nangyayari, here. Probability. Okay, pinag-usapan natin yung probability. The probability composed of almost never, unlikely, very likely, at almost always. Meaning, kung gaano kadalas yung pagnanakaw. Theft. Gaano ba kadalas ang pagnanakaw sa jewelry store? It will always depends on the organization, businesses. Kuwari kung may business ka sa Manila, then the severity, the likelihood will change. Ang pagnanakaw sa Manila is mostly on very likely or likely. Pero ang likelihood na magkaroon ka ng jewelry store sa Baggao, let's say na lang na unlikely. Kasi nga, meron ka ng security guard. Having a security guard is, I think it's almost, okay, let's say na likely na lang. Okay, likely. Kasi nga, mostly hindi naman nagnanakaw ng security guard kasi alam nila naka-vault yun. Yung mga naka-lock. Okay? Pero it will always depends on the place, businesses, kung saan ka, ganyan, yung likelihood niyan. That's why you need to conduct a risk analysis research muna. You need to conduct a process of risk analysis. You need to observe or do surveys or get a quantitative data from munisipyo or from any company na nagpro-provide ng quantitative data kung anong probability ng pagnanakaw sa isang jewelry store. Okay? So, for example, let's say likely. Okay? Likely. Let's say likely rin siya. Then, we can say that ang pagnanakaw, we can do the risk assessment, the prioritization. Ang pagnanakaw is more on likely, di ba? More on catastrophic, likely, then high. Then we can say it's more on high. And high. We can say na ito, catastrophic. Yan raw. Tingnan mo yung raw. Dahil sinabi nga natin catastrophic yung impact, we check the severity or the impact. Catastrophic. Tingnan natin yung column niya. Yung raw niya. Ito yung raw. So, sa catastrophic, may medium, high, high, very high, very high. Now, we check the probability of impact. Ito, column niya, it said here, high. Okay? Column, high, regarding catastrophic. So, that's why we have the output of prioritization na high. Now, paano natin masosolve yung yung manakawan ka? Magnanakaw. Okay? Paano natin masosolve yung risk na mananakawan ka? O yung magnanakaw? Okay? There's a lot of planning, a lot of solutions you can add. Number one is to have a security guard. Okay? Having a security guard. Okay? Having a security guard will fix the problem. Having secured vault, having time, you can,
Yes, sir.
meron yung time vault, di ba? Tsaka lang mag-o-open yung vault na yun in a certain time. You can do, marami kang pwedeng solution. Okay? Now, the use of this matrix, makikita mo na kung ano yung mga uunahin mo. Okay? For example, yung simple problem, simple threat. Wala, sa power outage, sa jewelry store naman, hindi na sa jewelry store, hindi na sa computer shop. Mag-iiba lahat to. Okay? Yung, mag-iiba yung, for example, hindi na siya major consequence. Diba? Mag-iiba yung impact. This is always, the risk matrix will always depends, or yung risk management always depends on the organization. Kasi mag-iiba yung potential impact. Kapag brand out ba, hindi ka makakabenta ng jewelry?
Nakakabenta naman siya.
Oo, nakakabenta naman siya. So, negligible. Let's say na, ang impact lang niya is negligible or minor. Kasi sabihin na lang natin minor kasi nainitan yung mga ganyan mo, baka lumabas yung mga employee mo. Diba? Sabihin natin minor. Sir, mainit kapag brand out. Based from my analysis, sir, hindi sila nagbebenta kasi nainitan sila, lumalabas. So, minor lang. Kasi walang aircon. O let's say minor or negligible. Pareho lang din yan. Okay? Now, the likelihood of sa Baggaw lang to Baggaw, is 41 to 60% na magbra-brand out in a day. Okay? So, itong problem na to, ang prioritization lang niya magiging mangyayari kung minor lang pala ang impact ng power outage, magiging medium lang siya. So, mas uunahin mo yung problem na pagnanakaw. Bukas pa lang, dapat kumuha ka na ng security guard. Bukas, bago ka pa magbukas ng business, dapat meron ka ng security guard or dapat meron ka ng security vault. Yung high priority na to, dapat gawin mo pa lang before ka mag-business or after ka mag-open. Dapat meron na agad yan. Yung power outage, medium, pwede natin paliban. Hindi naman ganun kalala. Depende kung saan yan. Kung sa Baggaw lang naman, sabihin lang natin negligible, kasi hindi naman maaarte ang mga tao dito. Kahit brand out, magbebenta pa rin sila. So, ang mangyayari dyan, kapag negligible, check natin yung column ng negligible, tapos yung likely, low. Magiging low na siya. Hindi na siya medium. Kasi nasa raw na tayo ng negligible. So, dapat magiging medium, magiging low na lang yan. Kung negligible ang impact. This is why it always depends on the organization. Yung plano na gagawin mo, yung risk assessment na gagawin mo, will always depends on the organizations, businesses, and place. Hindi pare-pareho ang lahat. Kagaya dito, naging jewelry na siya, kaya ang power outage is more on low. Hindi ko siya solusyonan or pwede ko na lang siya i-neglect. Wag na tayong bibili ng generator, ang mahal-mahal. Diba? Pwede ka naman benta ng jewelry kahit wala namang generator. Pero kapag high-end, kapag nasa Manila ka, kapag high-end business ka, high-end jewelry store ka, yung mga mamahalin, yung milyones, kailangan magiging itong negligible, either maging minor or major. Kasi Kapag nagka-brand out, syempre sasabihin nila, ang cheap naman nitong business na to, hindi nag-generator. Ba't ako bibili ng mamahaling jewelry dito kapag hindi man lang sila magkaroon ng generator? Di ba? It will depends on the survey, on your risk analysis. Kasi bawat lugar or bawat organization, iba-iba ang paningin. Okay? Hindi porket itong risk assessment mo na to, pareho sa another jewelry store. Hindi. Itong assessment natin to para sa mga jewelry store lang sa Baggaw. Ha? Hindi mo pwede sabing negligible lang ang power outage sa mga milyonaryong jewelry. Ha? Kasi kapag yung client nila pumasok sila sa jewelry store tapos walang kuryente, ano ba yan? Ang cheap-cheap naman nito. Di ba? So, mali na tong risk assessment na ginawa nyo. Ha? Very wrong na to kapag depende sa kung sa mamahaling company nyo pinakita to. Okay? Kasi you can say you will need to do another risk analysis for different, depends on the situation. It depends on the yan. Kaya kung malinagay sa assignment nyo, ha? I did situation, ha? Kaya ako ginawa sa assignment nyo kasi it will always, the risk management na gagawin nyo, risk assessment, it will always depends on the organizations, ha? Place, surroundings. Okay? Nagets nyo ba yung class? Nagets nyo ba nagets nyo ba to?
Yes, sir.
Okay na? Nagets yung nalito kanina?
Yes, sir.
Naintindihan mo naman na yung use nito? Okay, sino ba yung nag-ask ng question kanina? Kalimutan ka na. Hello? Sino ba
Yes,
nag-ask?
sir.
Yes, si Marisa. So, okay na, nag-gets mo na yung the row and the column. Okay? Just make sure na alam mo yung likelihood or the frequency at yung severity. Ha? Then, dun mo lang i-distinguish kung saan column mo ba o saan row at saan column mo kukunin. Okay? By that, makukuha mo na tong prioritization. Okay? By this one class, nakagawa ka na ng simple risk assessment mo because you already have the list of risk, okay, risk description, risk type, okay, if a strategic management errors ba siya or human error, okay, potential impact, then we get the probability impact. Okay? Kahit walang impact area, depende nga kung gusto ng client mo na magkaroon ng impact area, you can add impact area. But the important here is listing the risk and what is the prioritization. Okay? Actually, I think, but most of it, I think the standard way is you need to do impact area. Ha? Kung ano yung assets na matatamaan. Sometimes this is called assets. Okay? So, then, if you want to be completed, sir, paano ba yung complete na risk management? Makikita mo pa, may budget pa dito. Ha? Kung sino yung aayos. Okay? Ganun ang risk management. Mas kompleto pa na report. Okay? Assessment is just a data for your risk management plan. Okay? May questions ba tayo, class? I want, it's already 5 o'clock. Hindi na natin na-discuss itong, do you want to extend up to 5:30? Dahil late na ako, or all good na sa inyo? Do you want me to discuss perform cybersecurity risk assessment? A simple way on performing a risk assessment on cybersecurity. There's a 5 steps. Do you want me to continue or do you want to just check your modules? Sir, hindi ko na alam sasagot ko, sir, kasi gusto ko naman umalis pero gusto ko rin makinig. Ano, do you want me? It's already 5 and I know I need to follow my time, but I'm already late nga ako ng 30 minutes, so let's just discuss this. Let's end the class discussion 5:30. Right? Hindi naman kayo nagsasalita. Sir, ayaw. Okay. Let's just continue discussing how to perform a cybersecurity risk assessment in 5 steps. Actually, ginawa na natin dito, but on a different topics, more on jewelry, di ba? So, let's say we have a cybersecurity risk assessment. Okay? Let's just an example of cybersecurity risk assessment. Number one step is, of course, here, pwede natin gawing, ito lang yung number one, pero on the risk assessment, depends on the on the money or the budget of your company. You should first do, this is always, this is recommendable actually. It always depends on the budgets of the company. If the company have a high budget, you can just say na you can risk assess everything on cybersecurity. Basta about cybersecurity, please assess it. Okay? So, pwede tayong didiretso sa identification agad. Nagets nyo ba yung class? So, but for common company, they need to scope. They need to limit kung saan yung hangganan ng research nila. Okay? They need to limit it. Okay? So, just determining the scope, kung hanggang sa computer lang ba, hanggang sa website nyo lang ba. Okay? Kasi the scope will always depends on the budget of the company. Kung nag-list ka nga ng maraming ganyan, wala ka namang budget sa oras ng pag-research nila, then you should determine the scope. Hanggang dito lang pala yung budget ko, sa computer ko lang. Okay? So, that's why the first step is determining the scope of the risk assessment. Okay? Then, step 2 is how to identify cybersecurity risk. Okay? Now, we do the identifications. Okay? On cybersecurity risk, makikita nyo sa risk assessment natin, identify the assets, the impact area. Okay? So, bakit iba ang term niyan? Iba rin sa ganyan. Sabi ko nga, it will always depends on the researcher or the company. Okay? Just make sure na yung ginawa yung risk assessment is approved by the approved by the higher officials. Higher officials of the organizations. Just make sure na napa-approve nyo. Sir, gagamit ako ng assets, Ang term na gagamitin ko is assets. Just make sure na approve sila doon. Ano ba yung assets? Mas alam ko yung impact area eh. Mas alam ko yung the term na equipments. Kung ano yung mga ginamit mo. Kung ano yung matatamaan na equipments. Depende nga sa scope. Kung equipments lang yung gusto nilang makita, then equipments. If you said assets, you can say here, valuable data. You can say that. Just make sure that you are approved by the higher officials or your project manager. Okay? Just make sure na naintindihan ng government na yun. Okay? That's why sinabi ko nga paulit-ulit, iba-iba ang pero same lang ang magiging goal nyo to reduce the risk of the organizations. Okay? And what's to prioritize. Okay? Now, we identify here, how to identify cybersecurity risk, identify the assets. Okay? If hindi nyo alam yung mga list of threats, you can say on the scope, sir, ano yung mga equipments or ano yung mga hanggang saan yung gusto nyong valuable data ang i-assess natin. Right? You can say on identify assets, para nag-provide sila ng website. Please, let's identify first that the asset we will use is only the website. Okay, sir. Identify na natin yung assets natin, di ba? Now, we should know what kind of threats na para dun sa assets na to. Okay? As we know on Module 1, Module 2, assets is what we call valuable data, right? Valuable data for your information systems. Okay? Or for your organizations. Kung anong mga valuable data. So, yan lang yun. Once na-identify na natin yan, we identify the threats. The identifications, threats, or the risks. Okay? So, ano yung mga list of risks na possible na mangyari sa sa website. Okay? Dahil yung in-scope lang natin, yung scope natin is more on website lang, then the possible assets and threats are more on the websites only. Okay? So the assets on websites, let's say na yung data servers, yung mga images. Okay? So for example, one of the threat on websites is MySQL injection. Okay? SQL injection. Okay? So dahil na-introduce na natin na yung isang assets, yung sabi ng boss natin is yung scope nyo lang sa website lang. So one of the threat na pwedeng sa website is SQL injection. Number 3, consequence. Kung ano yung possible na mangyari. This is recommendable but not standard. You can just leave it. Pwede nyo lang sabihin, i-delete na lang nyo or pwede nyo lang pabayaan. At least, there's, the consequence. Okay? Now, on step 2, ito na yung meron ka. Okay? This is the sample output you have. Okay? You have the threat, the asset, okay? Then the consequence. Okay? Yan yun. Now, we analyze, okay, what's next is what will involve, go wrong scenarios. Wait, let me check. Okay. There's a lot of threat regarding website class. So, bakit yung asset mo web server, hindi naman yung website? Kasi one of the assets of website is web server. Di ba? Bakit hindi mo, pwede mo lang sabihin, buong assets is, I'm just identifying yung threat kasi more on the database. So, nasa scope pa rin siya ng website. Nasa pag-aaral, nasa ganyan pa rin siya, nasa topic pa rin siya ng website. Kasi ang website, may web server yan. Okay, yung web server nyo, merong threat na mangyayari na SQL injection. So, yun. Now, this is, if you done correctly, the step 1 and step 2, meron na kayong ganitong output. Okay? So, let's check. Meron ba tayong nakalimutan? This distance, assets, yeah. Okay? So, sir, we can move to step 3 na. Okay? On step 3, analyze the risk and determine potential impact. Again class, in risk assessment, hindi kayo makakagawa ng risk assessment kung wala kayong ganito, potential impact at yung likelihood. Yung frequency. And what we call, ano yung tawag natin sa process na yun? Risk analysis. Yes, risk analysis. So, that's why in step 3, magre-risk analysis na tayo. Analyze the risk and determine the potential impact. Now, blah, 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 ginanyan lang to. Just doing the scenario. I'm already discussing. Makinig na lang kayo, okay? I'm not gonna read it. Okay? Sabi kasi dito, ranking of likelihood is scaled from highly to likely. Okay? Here, we use almost never to almost always. Pero sa cybersecurity, sinabi dito sa isang article ng sabi, ginamit nila yung highly to likely. Same pa rin yan. If you convert it to percentage, 0 to 10% will be likely and highly will be 80% to 100%. Okay? It will depends na lang kung gusto lang nila tatlo lang. Kung gusto nila tatlo lang yung likelihood, pwede lang rin yun. Okay? It will always depends. Pero, sabi dito, they're using highly and likely. Okay? Now, the magnitude, if severe ba siya, kung minor ba siya, okay? Nakikita nyo dito, very severe. Now, nakita nyo, very severe. It's like unprofessional word kasi yun. Kaya, pinalitan ko ng catastrophic. Pareho lang rin yan. So, pare-pareho lang ba yung mga definition? Yes. Equivalent to disaster. Major disaster. Okay? Catastrophic meaning, mas malala pa sa major disaster. Okay? As in, pag sinabi mo catastrophic, you can say on your document na if you had a catastrophic severity of the threat, your business will be stagnant. Meaning, hindi na mag-work. Okay? So it will all, kaya nga kapag gumawa kayo ng risk assessment or risk management plan, make sure you define kung ano ang meaning ng very severe at you define anong meaning ng negligible ba. So anong percentage ng likely at high likely. Okay? Make sure you kasi pwede mo lang sabihin na sasabihin kasi ng CEO nyo or yung mga boss nyo, ano yung very likely? 60% to 80% ba yan? Or 55 to 80%? Sir, nasa 70 at 80%. So, dapat meron kayong ganun. Okay? Basta at least ma-determine nyo kung hanggang saan yung likely or highly nyo. Okay? Yung highly at yung likely nyo. Okay? Anyway, the third step, we analyze. Now, because we analyze, we know the likelihood and the impact. Yan na yung magiging output ng table nyo. Okay? So, asset, web server, or under the website yan. Okay? Hindi ka, sir, kung under the website, pwede ko bang sabihin na yung fire? Hindi. Wag ka maglagay ng fire na threat dahil we're just talking about risk, cybersecurity on a website lang. Okay? Under, you're not holding the server, pwede mong sabihin, depende nga sa scope mo. Sir, pwede ko bang maglagay ng fire? Depende nga lang sa scope mo. Kung ang scope mo lang is more on digital asset threats, more on digital threats, then please don't add natural disaster. Kasi wala sa budget nila. Either wala sa budget nila or wala silang pakialam doon dahil nasolve na nila yon. Nagets nyo ba, class? Sir, pwede ko bang lagyan ng ganito? Depende. It always depends on the first step, It always depends on the scope. Sa scope na pinag-uusapan natin ngayon is more on website, on digital assets. Okay? So, ang website, merong asset na web server. Okay? Yung branch niya. So, magiging ganito na yung output. Likelihood niya, dahil nag-risk analysis na tayo, magkakandak tayo ng surveys, observations, or nakakuha na kayo ng quantitative data sa mga munisipyo or sa mga ibang company na security, okay? Kagaya ng antivirus. Pwede ka pumunta sa antivirus company, like, magbigay nga kayo ng sikat na antivirus na ginagamit nyo. Can you tell me a popular antivirus para at least mag-gets nyo agad?
Avast,
Madam
sir.
Sir.
Avast, okay. For example, you can get likelihood of SQL injection in Avast. Okay? May mga data sila, exact data na na-figure out nila na may mga nag-report sa kanila. According to their computer logs, yung mga logs nila, yung mga records, everyday meron silang likelihood, the frequency. Everyday meron silang may certain data, may quantitative data sila. Okay? Or you can do observation, mas madali. Observation. Pero, mas gusto kasi ng mga boss, yung quantitative data, yung exact talaga. Para alam rin nila kung exact amount na pwede nilang i-invest. Nagets nyo ba yung class, yung likelihood? Makukuha nyo itong data when you do surveys, when you use software tools, quantitative analysis, quantitative research or qualitative research. Okay? So, itong likely na to, for example, upon my observations or interviews sa company na yon, sabi nila likely lang daw 50, either nasa 41 to 60%. Again, class, this 41 to 60% is basing from me. Basing from my observation lang. Hindi siya, or basing from the observation or interviews inside the organizations. Okay? For example, likely nga lang, 50% na nagkakaroon lang ng SQL injection, pero yung impact niya, yung severity niya, is severe. Meaning, pag nangyari yung threat na to, yung threat na to, severe yung magiging output niya. Ha? Severe yung consequence niya. More on consequence to, impact or consequence. Okay? Severe yung magiging consequence niya. Malala. Okay? Based from our analysis. Kasi kapag walang server, isipin nyo na lang to. Pag walang server, web server, kasi nga na SQL injection, kung na-compromise yan, either wala kang data or na-tamper na yung data mo. Okay? This is why it's severe. Very important siya. Severe. Malala yung magiging ganyan niya. Now, if we do, now the next step, the next step here is determine the prioritize and prioritize the risk. Meaning, yun nga, i-assess na natin, i-evaluate na natin. Okay? Makikita nyo dito, sir, bakit iba yung risk matrix niya, sir? Mali na yung risk matrix niya, sir. Hindi. Sabi ko nga, pwede rin dito yung severity niya, pwede rin dito yung likelihood niya. Okay? So, sir, ibang kulay, sir, ibang kulay. Pareho. It will depends on the researcher, okay? Like I said, red will be high. At nakita niyo yung very high, nagbigay siya ng violet as equivalent meaning to very high. Kaya nga, it always indicate kung ano ang equivalent ng isang value na yan para at least maintindihan. Kagaya nito, sinabi natin yung dark red is very high, tapos yung lighter red is high lang. Okay? So, sa risk matrix na ginamit niya to, 5 by 5, gumamit lang siya ng, ang pinagkaiba lang nito sa dito is pababa, negligible to severity naman to. Ito kasi, pababa, negligible to catastrophic. Ito naman sa kanya, from severe to negligible naman. So, yan lang yung pinagkaiba. Pero at least, as long merong likelihood or may severity, the impact, risk matrix pa rin yan at yung may kulay. Yung kulay, it will depend sa mood nyo. Subjective yung kulay. It will depends on your mood, feelings. Okay? Sir, nasa mood ko, pink yung low. Basta malagay mo, low siya. Okay? Then, we can do sabi nga natin, we can now we know the analysis, the output of your analysis, the likelihood and the impact. We can now assess and we can do the risk assessment na. We can complete our risk assessment. Okay? We can evaluate na. Okay? We will know that the likely for here, ano ulit natin i-solve? Review ko lang. Using their matrix, using their matrix. Always, kapag meron kayong ganitong table class, kung may ganito kayong table, make sure you provide your own matrix. Kasi nga, itong matrix, yung output nyo dito will always depends on your matrix. It always depends on your risk table, your matrix table. Okay? For example, ito, gumamit siya ng ibang table, iba yung column ng very severe, madali lang yan. So, let's see, check likelihood. So, sabi dito, yung likely, sorry, kasi wala ko yung bigger, ganyan. Nakikita nyo ba ito? Ito yung likely. Ito yung column ng likely. So, dito natin nahanapin. Likely. Now, hanapin natin yung severe. So, severe, likely, nakalagay dito high. Kaya ako linagay dito high. Kaya ang prioritization niya is high kasi kapag pinag-combine mo ang likely at severe, ang prioritization mo based from the risk matrix, you can see it's high. Ito, high. Kasi under siya column ng likely at severe. Now, kapag palitan mo yan ng highly likely, kung laging nagkakaroon ng SQL injection, magiging very high na yan. Okay? So, now we know that the prioritization is high. Sabi ko nga sa inyo, same concept lang, pero the scope is different. Kaya ganito yung naging table. Now, you can document all risks. You can, after you do the risk assessment, you can document all risks na. For example, there's a lot more risk and you can add more. You can also include on your documentation risk scenario, identification date, existing security control, current risk level, treatment plan, progress status. Okay? You can add on your assessment here more if you want to be more precise. This what do you call this, headings, okay? So you can add more information like this scenario, identification date, kung kailan mo siya nakita, existing security controls, current risk levels, okay? Yan yung mga ganyan. Tapos, here, on take notes here, sabi nga dito, risk assessment is large and ongoing undertaking. Same with risk management. Always double check every day or weeklies or quarterly. Always go back to your risk assessment or risk management plan to check if ganun pa rin ba yung nangyayari. Okay? To update kung likely pa rin ba nangyayari yan, or to check if kung yung likelihood or yung frequency or yung severity niya is nagbago ba? Kailangan ba natin baguhin lagi yung baguhin natin yung prioritization? Kaya nga sabi dito, it's always undergoing. Okay? Hindi pwedeng isang beses ka lang, ay sir, nagtapos ko na yung risk management. O sir, boss, sabi mo sa organization, yes, make sure you, sasabihin ng boss mo lagi dyan, make sure you check every quarterly, yearly. A good risk management or risk assessment always always update their outputs. Okay? Always update their outputs. Kasi it will always depends on the situation. Okay? So, now on your assignments, I given example of situations. Okay? Then just do risk description. Risk description. Provide kahit ilang risk ang ilagay nyo dito. Provide possible risk for these situations. Okay? So basing from these situations, provide all the risks that can happen. Then provide the consequence. Just do your qualitative based from your, either magtanong kayo or either magbigay kayo ng probability. Okay? Okay, let's, para hindi consequence is the severity. Okay? Severity. Severity means ito. Ito, kung negligible ba siya, kung minor lang ba siya. Okay? Probability, kung gaano kadalas mangyari yung risk na yon. Then, paano mo siya ipa-prioritize? So, anong risk matrix yung gagamitin natin? Gamitin niyo to. That will be your assignment class. Okay? You list all the risks regarding this situation. Then list all the kung gaano ba siya kalala. You do your own analysis lang, class. Pero make sure naman na lifelike naman yung data na ilalagay nyo. Baka ilagay nyo 100% na ilagay, Just make sure na realistic yung data na ilalagay nyo dito. Even though it's a qualitative data, just make sure na ganyan siya. Hindi nalalayo sa katotohanan. Okay? So, sir, ano lalagay kong severity dito? Either negligible, minor, major, or catastrophic. Sir, ano lalagay kong probability dito? Kung gusto mo ng percentage, di percentage, basta alam mo yung sagot dito sa prioritization. Okay? So, either almost never, unlikely, likely, very likely, or 1%, 10%, ikaw na bahala dyan. As long tama tong prioritization based from the probability. But I will ask you, class, if, please just use na lang yung known words, yung words mismo, yung almost never, unlikely, likely, very likely. Basta ito yung gagawin, itin nating matrix to solve this assignment. If you got this correctly, then congratulations, you know how to do a simple risk assessment or risk management plan. Risk management plan kasi kailangan mo pang lagyan pa ng action plan . So, Congratulations, at least you know the basics of risk assessment. Yun na lang. You know how to do a simple risk assessment. Okay? Basing from this situation. Again, class baka ano-anong risk lalagay mo dito. It will always based on the situation or the organization. Okay? Or depends on the place. Okay? So just make sure yung ilalagay yung lahat na threats or risk dito, just make sure na based from this situation. Nagets ba natin? Or problem? Okay? Nagets ba natin, class?
Yes, sir.
May questions
Yes,
ba kayo?
sir.
Because I'll be busy.
Wala na, sir.
I will be busy now after this and I might not check or help you for your questions. Kaya please ask your questions na kung meron pa kayong hindi naintindihan.